We're getting started. Okay, good evening.
Hello.
This work session of the ISD 279 School Board is being held in the forum room of the Educational Service Center at 11200 93rd Avenue North in Maple Grove on Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. The work session is being audio recorded. The recording will be made available on the district website within 2 business days after the work session has ended. With regard to the audio recording, our communications staff has asked that we share a friendly reminder that side conversations during the work session are picked up by the recorder and can affect sound quality. Also, conversations during transitions between agenda items are on the recording as well. The intent of the school board work session is to allow for school board discussion of topics. Work sessions do not include an opportunity for audience members to address the board. To acknowledge attendance this evening, I'll ask that all present at the table state their name, starting to my left.
Jackie Mosqueda Jones, school board member.
Thomas Brooks, school board member.
Kay Valella, Executive Director of Community Relations.
Brian Severson Hall, Executive Director of Community Engagement.
John Morstead, Executive Director of Finance and Operations.
Steve Flisk, Assistant Superintendent for the elementary schools.
Sanjana Hemroy, student from Lasia Senior High. Will Rahman, student from Lasia Senior High.
Izzy Andor, student from OALC.
Amy Tolleson, District Level Principal.
Okay. Brian Bass, Assistant Superintendent for Equity and Achievement.
Heather Douglas, school board member.
Sarah Mitchell, school board member.
Amy Moore, General Counsel.
Kim Heil, Superintendent.
Nora Mohammed, Student Advisory Task Force member.
At what school?
Ossia Senior High.
Thank you.
And I, Tanya Prince, school board member and present. The purpose of the school board work sessions is to build trust and teamwork, to exchange information, and when applicable, to provide direction in order to facilitate efficient and effective decision-making at regular school board meetings. Dr. Howell, will you please share your check-in?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Prince and Chair Mosqueda Jones and board members. I am so excited to this evening. Our first one that we're going to introduce this evening is our Superintendent Student Advisory Group. They're just pure brilliance. Just saying that. So I'll have Amy Tollefson introduce them.
Wonderful. Well, I have the great joy of working with these students throughout the year, along with Superintendent Heil. And so what I wanted to do is just because this is our very first year of this group and walking through the process on how we landed where we are at today. And then our students are going to be sharing a little bit more about their project. So before we begin, we have one more student who just arrived. So would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Jacqueline. I go to Maple Grove Senior High.
Thank you.
All right. So the purpose of this group we identified is having our leaders define a specific project that was specifically stating how students in Osseo School District feel welcomed and centered. So that was really the bigger question that we were looking at throughout this year. Because we were bringing students together through multiple different sites, we wanted to make sure that we were building community. And I just want to share this because this was like such a fabulous way to start one of our meetings. It was, our icebreaker, our community builder was really around just create a positive message. And of course our students came up with brilliant things to say that really uplifted our group, and from my perspective it really changed the tone of our group. So I just wanted to show you some of the wonderful things that they do and kind of capture some of the artifacts from our meetings and just the way that one example of how we're building community with each other. All right, so the process we used, and this was in partnership with Brooklyn Bridge Alliance for Youth, and they helped to facilitate the experience, and we would also plan the meetings together each month. Held consensus building, which essentially was developing that question that I spoke about, which is on our screen, brainstorming, clustering all these ideas that we brainstormed, because they had many, let me tell you, and then identifying a theme for each of those categories. So what that ended up looking like was this. So we had all sorts of Post-it notes, lots of conversations, lots of collaboration, and this was all student-driven. And so these are the categories, and this just is a typed-up example of what you just saw. I know that the Post-it notes are a little harder to read, so this is a little bit easier to read. And you can see right here were those big themes that the students identified. So this year specifically, they are focusing on mental health. And these are some of the pieces around education, around mental health, and creating more awareness of resources. And they are going to go into much more detail with all of the work that they are doing. And I just, again, wanted to highlight the key pieces of what they are working on this year. After they identified mental health and came up with the different projects, we also went through another process to look at how do we actually deliver on this, and they're going through strengths, dangers, weaknesses, and benefits. So my point of sharing with this is just showing process and that we were very intentional with them and helping us to land where we are today. So here's just some fun pictures of our time together. They're really fun group. So before I turn it over to our students today, I just want to share that this is very, very early on in our project. And this is, we've really just started to work on the products. And we know that some of the products each need refining. We know that some of the products that they've identified at this point, we actually might already exist in our system. And it's our work to walk the students through their own process to see what already exists. Does it align with what their intentions are, or is it something that we can refine? So they'll be able to walk through that, but I just want you to have that understanding as you start to see the different things that they're focusing on this year. And also, this is truly their student perspective. This is truly delivered by them. There is, recent additions this afternoon, which really just highlight what their passions are and their priorities and the information that they thought was really, really important. So this is not filtered by any of the adults or me. This is truly their work. So with that, I'm going to switch our slide deck and pass it off to our students.
Okay. Hi, so again, we're the Student Advisory Task Force here, and the topic we chose, once again, is taking care of your mental health. We chose this because this is a growing topic now. It's becoming more rare and people are having lots of questions. So we believe that by introducing this topic to you guys, maybe we could get some fresh ideas from what we already created. And I'll start by introducing myself. Again, my name is Mom. I'm a junior at Osceola Senior High. Okay. My name is Sanjana. I'm also a junior at Osceola Senior High.
My name is Noor Mohammed, and I'm also a junior at Osceola Senior High School.
My name is Jacqueline. I go to Maple Grove Senior High and I'm a junior. My name is Izzy. I attend the OLC and I'm a senior.
And do we know Ronnie Brown is Park Center, what grade?
Yeah.
Junior. Okay, thank you.
So our process involved a lot of steps as we went through earlier. We first started by brainstorming all the ideas that we all had, and especially it came from a big group. There's more of us that was sitting there, but some that couldn't make it. But we all had ideas of problems or things that we'd like to see changed in the district and in our schools, and problems that we saw were impacted in all the schools. And so we all put in our ideas, we brainstormed, we then clumped them into categories, and then not necessarily what mattered more, because we believe all the problems that we addressed, they all had the same significance, but we initially came down to mental health because that's kind of like the backbone of all the things that we mentioned before in our brainstorming process. So it went from brainstorming, we made a choice, and then we made a plan, and like this is kind of our steps to take action on how we're going to act on it.
Alright, so why mental health? So I think the main thing when we were going over this is that we need to focus more on prevention rather than reaction. We shouldn't be waiting for something to happen in order to go against it. And when it does happen, we shouldn't let it die down. We should keep the same level of interest and production like over the whole entire school year, because this is a very severe topic. And if it does die down and it feels unheard, then it's gonna create openings for other things for reaction, which we don't want to see. And we also wanted to have constant availability to resources. So this is just the ability to not only be able to talk to someone, but to know that you have a resource and to know what those resources are at your school.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about what is mental health. So mental health in general isn't just a feeling, thought, or stage. It's our mental health as a whole. It's not just when you're having bad days, it's also your good days. And it's more than just an illness. Some of our goals, as we already have mentioned, is increase accessibility of mental health resources, destigmatize the talk about mental health, equip teachers with the proper resources to support students along with themselves, as well as teach students how to use those resources, and then cultivate a safe environment that centers students' voice. So just making it a comfortable environment for students to share their experiences with their mental health struggles and making it so that they're heard regardless of who they are. Now, okay, so who's impacted by mental health? Everyone's impacted by mental health and can suffer from a mental illness. However, our environment, the world we live in, and the effects have great effects on our mental health. It is not a shock that the Black community, along with other communities of color, have a high rate of mental illness. Many of these communities have hit barriers when trying to get help, such as lack of resources, and resources that aren't very, very good or selective. They don't have a large amount to support the community as much as we would like them to. Black youth are more likely to suffer from mental illnesses such as depression or anxiety compared to their white peers, and Native Americans also have a notably high rate of suicide and mental struggles. People who identify as a part of the LGBTQ+ community are likely to use mental health resources more than their hetero peers. And in that community, bisexual and transgender people are reported to have the highest concern of mental health struggles. People in the LGBTQ+ community are more likely to face shame and bullying from their peers for being different, quote unquote. And also, men are less likely to speak about their mental health due to the stigma that society has put on them. Men are less likely to get help compared to women, and they are also more likely to commit suicide. However, there are other factors such as men use more violent tactics compared to women. So I just want to point all this out because everyone has different struggles, but some people have more struggles that make it harder for them to get help, or the societal standards for them makes it so they're not safe. Like they can't communicate safely about what they need. And then we have some statistics. So here, according to the Minnesota Post, in 2022,
You're doing great, hon.
1/3 of Minnesota high schools experienced mental health struggles, and that's a 10% increase since 2016. According to the Mental Health America, 16.39% of youth ages 12 to 17 have reported at least one major depressive episode in the past year. Minnesota ranks 43rd with 19.36%. 59.8% of youth did not receive mental health support. Minnesota ranks 31. 6.3% of youth in the United States reported drug abuse. Black children under 13 are twice as likely to die by suicide than their white peers. 36.6% suicide rate in the Black community. The LGBTQ+ community reported 39% have reported mental health issues, and they are also more likely to use resources 2.5 times more than their hetero peers. So it's just important to recognize that these statistics matter, and they prove that we're not really giving the support that we could be giving, and we hope that what we're setting up can help people in all communities get the support because everyone deserves it. Okay.
Good job, Lizzie.
Okay, so me and my partner, who cannot be here today, were in charge of sort of the visuals, okay? We were trying to put all of this into something more compact, because I know that was a lot of information that was talking about. Also, bear with me.
Values, paving the way for a more sustainable and inclusive future. As we explore the emerging technologies like generative AI, it's essential to recognize that many major technological advancements follow Gartner's hype cycle. This cycle involves phases of heightened expectations, both positive and negative, until reaching a point of realistic understanding regarding the capabilities of the technology. Currently, generative AI is believed to have passed the peak of inflated expectations. This indicates that we are approaching phases where we will gain a clearer understanding of the practical applications and implications of this technology in our daily lives. Reflecting on the current hype cycle, it's important to acknowledge that education has experienced numerous technological shifts that have ultimately led to productive outcomes. For example, during the 1960s, the introduction of the calculators in education sparked significant controversy, with concerns that their use might harm students' mathematical education. However, as history unfolded, we discovered that math education did not come to a halt because of calculators, and in fact, their integration enhanced the learning experience by providing broader access to mathematical concepts and allowing students to delve deeper into the learning process at an earlier age, ultimately fostering a stronger foundation for advanced math skills. The calculator is just one of many examples of technology disruptors that have emerged over time, and we're now experiencing them in a more frequent pace as technology advances more rapidly. Consider the revolutionary impact of the Gutenberg printing press, which granted widespread access to written language, but was also met with significant controversy for various reasons. In more recent times, education has grappled with the role of video content, in particular YouTube, digital collaboration tools like Google Docs, smartphones, and social media. We continue to navigate the benefits and challenges posed by these technologies, seeking the right balance of their use within the educational environment. What sets generative AI like ChatGPT apart from other tech disruptors in education is its unprecedented rate of adoption. Consider this chart illustrating the time it took for several key technologies to reach 100 million users. Typically, each technology took 2 or more years to achieve this milestone. However, ChatGPT accomplished this feat in just 64 days, effectively arriving at our doorstep before we had finished running our errands. This rapid adoption left little time for educators to fully learn and explore its potential before the hype cycle took off. Artificial intelligence, though not new, continues to evolve, with the latest iteration being generative AI. The term AI was coined in the 1950s when scientists began exploring the potential of computer technologies to emulate human-like intelligence. ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Microsoft Copilot are examples of generative AI. They're akin to how iPhone, Google Pixel, and Samsung Galaxy are different brands of smartphones that enable cellular communication. Artificial intelligence serves as the overarching term for technology that simulates human-like intelligence that performs tasks. Machine learning is a subset of AI. It involves algorithms that learn from data to make predictions or decisions. For instance, this has been in our lives for many years. Netflix uses machine learning to recommend shows or movies based on your previous viewing history. Generative AI is a specific type of machine learning, utilizing trained data to predict and generate outcomes, such as producing coherent text based on an input. Tools like ChatGPT are categorized as large language models, or LLMs, if you might hear that within the media, due to their extensive text-based data set and their capability to generate human-like text. To grasp the power of generative AI tools like ChatGPT, let's consider a comparison between the human brain and these AI models. The human brain is estimated to contain about 86 billion neurons, which serve as the connectors for processing information and shaping our human experience. In contrast, when ChatGPT launched in November 30th of 2022, a year ago this fall, it consisted of 175 billion parameters, equivalent to the information connectors in the AI model. Remarkably, by March 14th of 2023, just over 3 months later, ChatGPT-4 was introduced with an astonishing 100 trillion parameters, representing a 500-fold increase compared to its predecessor. Generative AI is not just a concept. It's a powerful reality that is already making significant impacts. As we begin to explore the potential of these tools, we're witnessing immediate opportunities unfolding in education. Many educational applications are leveraging generative AI technologies to deliver responsive and personalized learning experiences for students. For instance, Khan Academy utilizes AI to tailor tutoring experiences, providing personalized guidance across various educational topics for students. Moreover, on the operational side of education, AI technologies are streamlining time-intensive tasks that often detract from collaborative teaching efforts. These technologies assist staff in drafting professional development and lesson plans, setting student goals, summarizing information, and outlining strategic plans, thus allowing educators to focus more on enhancing the learning experience. At Osceola Schools, we embrace non-malicious AI tools, allowing students and staff to use them regularly. Let's take a look at the last 90-day snapshot of our system's AI tool usage. According to this chart, Tuesdays happen to emerge as our peak AI usage day for some reason. And with an average user accessing AI tools approximately 14 times over the 90-day period. Despite the vast possibilities offered by AI, it presents us with significant challenges that we must address. Some key ethical questions we need to consider include, what does responsible digital citizenship entail in an age of AI? How will our organization strategize and prepare for potential risks associated with AI implementation? And how will we proactively engage the communities we serve in discussions around digital ethics and ensuring responsible AI practices? In addition to our ongoing efforts to understand generative AI use in Osceola Schools, we are drawing insights from two other key resources. One is the recently released National Education Technology Plan by the Office of Educational Technology at the federal level, and the COSN 2024 K-12 Innovation Report. While the National Education Technology Plan does not specifically address generative AI, it does acknowledge AI within the broader technology landscape. The plan focuses on three critical areas: the digital use divide, or how are students leveraging technology for creation rather than consumption; the digital design divide, how are educators designing instruction that effectively integrates technology; and the digital access divide, how are we ensuring equitable access to resources that prepare students to thrive in a future workforce. The COSN, or the Consortium of School Networking, is the premier national professional organization for education technology leadership. Each year, COSN produces a K-12 innovation report that examines the current challenges, accelerators, and technology enablers shaping innovation in education. I'm excited to add that Ryan Cox, our new hired Director of Technology, is one of this year's authors of this national report. In the report, accelerators represents the factors driving most significant positive impacts through innovative practices, while tech enablers are the technology resources that support and amplify this work. This year's report highlights generative AI as one of the top 3 resources that with the potential to significantly enhance our work in education. Understanding this background is crucial as we shift our focus to the current perspective on AI within Osseo Area Schools. Earlier this year, I convened several stakeholders from across the system to establish our AI task force. The primary objectives of this task force were to craft a purpose statement for AI within our organization and develop foundational guiding principles that will shape the future initiatives and discussions surrounding AI use in Osseo Area Schools. Tonight marks the inaugural public presentation of our AI guiding document, which is included in your board packet. This document represents the culmination of the dedicated efforts of our exceptional AI task force team. The purpose statement crafted by the AI task force outlines that artificial intelligence in Osseo Area Schools is a transformative resource. It empowers educators and scholars to engage in innovative teaching and learning practices, blending the ethical use of advanced technology with human insights to enrich the overall education experience. We had a lot of conversation within our team about the role of humans and the human experience in the technology use that we have and how we engage with advanced technologies like artificial intelligence. The AI Task Force has established 4 guiding principles: ethical use, human-centered design, digital equity, and future readiness. Tonight, the members of our AI Task Force will delve into each of these principles, discussing what they entail for both staff and students.
Okay, I'm going to start us off. I have the first one, so ethical use. Our first guiding principle is around ethical use, and this principle establishes the parameters for how scholars and staff can use AI responsibly in the school setting. A common concern about scholars using AI tools surrounds its potential misuse, such as using ChatGPT for academic dishonesty. However, this principle isn't about restricting or prohibiting AI, rather it's about communicating when AI can be used. It needs to be clear to our scholars when they can and cannot use AI for class assignments. For example, using ChatGPT to narrow down a topic idea or create an outline for a paper can be a useful scaffold for our scholars. It can help them get past that dreaded blank page. I don't know if that's happened to you before, but it has to me. But it also means that if a student copies and pastes directly from ChatGPT, that would not be acceptable. It also means giving credit where credit is due when using ChatGPT or other AI tools. So in fact, I need to give ChatGPT some credit here because it's very helpful to when you're wordsmithing, trying to find that just right phrase or word that you want to use. Similarly, staff like scholars must acquire the knowledge and skills for how to use AI responsibly and teach and model this for our scholars. AI can be a powerful tool that can be used to create lesson plans, differentiate text passages, and design assessments. But ultimately, the promise of AI, when we're thinking of ethical use, is to use AI to replace some of the common tasks that our staff do every day so that they have more time to collaborate with our colleagues, to build relationships with our scholars, and to personalize learning.
All right. This last year, we were able to go to an educational AI conference, and one significant theme that came out from the conference was to keep humans in the center of AI. It is critical to remember that this tool is human-made to be used by humans to help humans. As we learn more about artificial intelligence, we want to make sure that we teach digital literacy and keep a critical lens on the media we are consuming. AI was programmed by human input and is learning based on human interactions. Humans have unconscious biases that get pulled into the programming. Therefore, we must look at all media critically. I had the opportunity this year to work in a class where students were creating a story about a fictional character that they were creating in their mind. After students had identified the main aspects of their character, we used AI to generate an image that would go along with the fictional character they created. I worked with a young man whose character was a 13-year-old boy who had recently immigrated from Mexico, living in Minnesota, whose name was Jamal. When we and the student and I entered the characteristics into the image generated, every result entered in a boy with black skin. When the student wanted a boy with brown skin, he wanted it to reflect himself. After changing and tweaking different aspects of this fictional character, we continued to get the same results of a black boy. Finally, we tried removing the name Jamal, and when we removed Jamal, we had a brown student. That gave us a great opportunity in class to talk about how we have to examine the media that we see and teach digital literacy to tell them that not everything we see is real and we have to look at it critically. We want to make sure that we use artificial intelligence in our world to teach students to think critically and determine if what we are seeing is accurate. We want to leverage technology to increase our human intelligence, and we want to use AI to be a place to brainstorm and gather information, but remember that it's human-centered and we have to look at it critically.
As generative AI technology, digital equities. As generative AI technology rapidly enters our classrooms, it's important that we ensure access for all to this transformative tool. The design and implementation of AI in Osseo must be tailored to meet the diverse needs, strengths, and backgrounds of all of our students. We also need to address historical and systemic barriers that have blocked students from opportunities to learn in the past and ensure that the use of AI is fair and equitable for everyone. Drawing inspiration from the White House's AI Bill of Rights, this principle reflects the transformative potential to improve our students' lives while emphasizing the importance of mitigating potential harms, which is a goal that is both essential and achievable. An example of equitable access is not blocking generative AI tools like ChatGPT. We know that restricting AI affects scholars who don't have access to these same tools at home. When there are school-wide bans on AI, kids with access to good internet and these tools at home have the ability to try and to fail and to learn and to grow, and those who don't are left out. One of the questions our task force was posed with was, do we want to continue with these same AI bans as other districts, or do we want to address this problem in a healthy, community-driven way? At the end of the day, how can we ensure that AI tools promote equity rather than exacerbate inequalities? Helping scholars understand AI tools is paramount. It's not equitable for schools to rely on kids to build these skills at home or on their own or not at all. Our role as educators is to find trusted tools that we feel comfortable putting in front of our scholars so that all scholars can responsibly learn those skills.
I'm sorry, could you say that last part again?
Sure. The whole sentence.
Yeah.
Our role as educators is to find trusted tools that we feel comfortable putting in front of our scholars so that all scholars can responsibly learn those skills.
I'm sorry, it was the sentence before that.
Okay.
You said something, a phrase, and I just couldn't remember it.
Sure. I'll do the whole thing, there's only 2 sentences.
Sorry.
Helping students understand AI tools is paramount. It's not equitable for schools to rely on kids to build these skills at home or on their own or not at all. Our role as educators is to find trusted tools that we feel comfortable putting in front of our scholars so that all of them can responsibly learn those skills.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Future Ready. Just as it was impossible for my 10-year-old self to ever imagine being able to make a video phone call, Edinburgh fifth graders also can't imagine what sort of changes AI will bring to their lives. They currently enjoy using AI to edit their photos and generate imaginary creatures and landscapes from text that they provide. They dream about sending a virtual self to school while they get to stay at home. And I'm pretty sure that their understanding of the possibilities that AI provides will vastly and quickly expand once they get to middle school, just a few short months from now. I'm excited to be able to share in some of these beginnings of that discovery with them, helping them thrill with the possibilities while developing their understanding that for the most part, AI can only give back based on what you put in. Helping them understand how to harness that power that they have at their fingertips is key to helping them understand that AI is so much more than, hey Google, write my research paper. Employers have told us that the 4 C's of the 21st century skills are what they are looking for in our graduates: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creative thinking. These skills become even more important as we look at incorporating AI into the workplace. The specifics of how we can use AI in every facet of our lives changes almost daily. We need to help staff and students consider the deeper questions that will guide them in their use of AI. Questions like, how will we responsibly and ethically work with AI? How can we look critically at the work produced by AI? How does AI help aid our creativity rather than just do the work for us? These are the considerations we need to keep in mind and explicitly teach alongside teaching the students and learning for ourselves, staff, how to use the AI tools effectively and meaningfully. Our value of scholars and staff being lifelong learners is definitely something we will see playing out in concrete ways as we consider the trajectory of AI in Osseo area schools.
And that concludes our presentation. As I share the information that you've heard around kind of this guiding document, so this is, we're building the basement. So we still have a lot of work to continue to do and a lot of dialogue to engage in. But from where we were a year ago, where, it was here, teachers knew, students were using it, we haven't had a real conversation around it. This is giving us a framework and language that we can now use as a system as we think about what does this look like. I think about the acceptable use policies coming up for review in the 400 section. And as we talk about instructional practice, as teachers are wondering, right, how do I engage this, incorporate this within my classroom? This is again, we're at the basement stage of setting the foundation for what we can build all the rest of the work on within our system and help build context in the conversation. So with that, I'll turn it over for questions.
Questions or discussion?
I'm excited to see how this evolves in education. At first I was concerned about plagiarism, as I'm sure every teacher is. But I feel good about the way that we're addressing it here in Osseo. I think banning it is, as the students before us told us, that's not going to work, because if you ban it, they'll find a way to use it. And it will cause more inequities. So thank you for the presentation. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, we wrestled a lot with that. The plagiarism piece is the big component that came out, and districts are really wrestling with this in different dynamics. And part of the reality is the checkers that are out there, while they may be getting used, research bears out that they're mostly inaccurate, and it actually disproportionately flags students who are English language learners, because as an English language learner, you write in a more technical language, and AI checkers tend to flag technical language more than conversational language, which is, again, how a language learner is learning to write and construct language. It's also interesting, Stanford came out with a recent study around the impact of AI and cheating in schools. And what they found in their most recent study is that the percentage of cheating actually hasn't changed. How students are cheating is changing. So you still have the same percentage of students that have always been cheating, just instead of paying somebody to write the paper, they're throwing it into ChatGPT to produce it for them. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about when we thought it was going to be, fairly rampant and widespread. Not that it's not an issue and that we don't have to address that and have those conversations, but I think there might have been some more fear initially than what may be actually transpiring within the reality.
I do have another question. Do you see, I imagine that this is an opportunity for us to, much like calculators allowed us to get kids to think at higher, like taxonomies, higher levels of thinking. Here's a chance for us to move beyond just comprehension, spit out, whatever, and now let's talk about evaluating and synthesizing and analysis at an earlier age. Is that?
I think somebody put it, artificial intelligence, there's that human component, you're putting the input. So if anybody here has ever used ChatGPT, if you ask it a stupid question, you're going to get a stupid result, right? So it really is that skill of helping our scholars learn how to ask good, it's sort of like that whole inquiry research kind of model, like how do we ask good questions? How can we narrow and focus? It's, didn't output exactly what I want, so now I get to try again and refine. And so yes, I think it definitely will help lead to more critical thinking and analysis.
Interestingly, as you think about the critical thinking of putting things in, you still have to have background knowledge and content knowledge, because if you don't have that, you can't critically analyze what the output is, and you can't ask the right questions. So to effectively use AI, you really have to have a high level of background skill to effectively use it, which is also why it was really interesting as, social media came out, 10 years ago, we all were surprised when we were starting to see these job postings in the public sector or private sector around social media analysts, because private companies were hiring individuals to analyze social media feeds. We're now seeing this trend started coming out, 6-figure salaries last spring for private sector companies hiring prompt creators. So somebody who can critically create a input into artificial intelligence to help their business intelligence within that space. There's no degrees, there's no background for formal education related to that industry at the moment, as new workforce opportunities are being created within the space.
No, I just want to say I appreciate how thoughtful and thorough you guys are being at this stage and cautious setting, like you called it the basement or foundational stage. So it's good, helpful presentation.
I'm excited, just knowing how we're using it at my workplace, I'm excited to see how it might help with instructional practices and efficiency and effectiveness and just the power of analysis. Even just like we use it for kind of listening to what we're doing and then having insight as to how we can do our jobs better, even in our facilitation and work I do. So I'm excited to see all of the opportunities that it can present.
Well, I'm conflicted, as always, when it comes to technology, because it's very cool, right? And when it comes to the possibilities, like what Tanya's talking about, and creating efficiencies for our teachers where they're able to focus more on instruction, that's amazing and incredible. When it comes to our students, though, a concern that I have is our job as educators is to teach them how to think, not what to think. And I think that with programs like ChatGPT, that instead of a program that says, you type in a sentence and it's worded in such a way. I've used programs in the past. I don't know if anybody's had to use our Family Wizard, but if you have, you're my people. But if you say something like, for example, in an angry tone, it will alert you to change your language, but it doesn't tell you what to say. And that kind of tool, I think, is very useful. I am more concerned about taking away their creativeness when they're using programs like this. And also a lot of, if all of us are using the same program and we're all putting in the same stuff, we're all going to get out the same answers. And that's not real. And it takes away the human voice, I think. And just like what you were talking about, I love the example you use. And to show them how they need to look at it critically, that's super important. I love that. But I also don't think kids care. I think when they get to a certain point, they just want to get their assignment done and turned in. And so that's where I'm like, where do we find the balance? I don't think banning is the solution. They're going to use it anyways. But how do we find that, that happy middle ground where they're able to use the technology in a functional way that benefits their learning and doesn't hinder it, right? And one thing, I actually think this is a little funny, I just anecdotally, I don't know where it went, but the calculator thing, okay? I know there's a lot of controversy. We don't use calculators. I homeschool my kids. They do not use calculators till Algebra 2. And they are geniuses when it comes to math, and we use Saxon, which is the article that you posted was John Saxon. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, calculators are great, but kids need to know their basic facts and be able to do it quickly, and I think that applies to AI use. They need to be able to, if they have an assignment in social studies and it's, on World War II, they need to be able to know the content of it and not just have it populate something out. Because you really, like you said, you have to have some knowledge, but you don't need a lot, especially at a high school or middle school level course, and particularly at elementary level course. So that's where my concern is I don't feel like it's equitable for them. And the reason I don't think it is because I think it will limit certain students' ability to think creatively on their own and to develop strategies for their learning versus just popping it in the system every time. So I just wanted to put that in the space as something to consider as we move forward. I don't know what that solution is. That's your job.
Well, I think
Well,
that's a good point
collectively
too.
ours.
I personally, at this time, like many of these AI tools, I don't see even being used at the elementary level unless the examples that, for example, Sally's talking about is our Adobe Express, which is sort of like it has AI built in. A lot of tools now have that in. But like the generative AI, I don't even see being used right now at the elementary level.
They didn't even seem to be aware of it when I asked them. Like literally.
But
these
it's
were
in
their
everything
examples.
now, right?
It
Like
is,
when you're
yeah.
on your phone, it has like the little circle thing. Like, I don't know. It's in everything, and they're going to be exposed to it before we know it.
Based on that, I'm also a little curious about what it might mean for our English language learners, having that kind of access, especially when doing more writing, and sort of what, I don't know if that's shown up at all in terms of some of the things that you've looked at in terms of research, but how that might be that instructional support to help our students who might really struggle with being able to communicate their thoughts or write their thoughts in a way that they could get positive feedback or something. I'm just curious if that has shown up in.
Well, I think we're also such in the new territory, that's why I intentionally shared the Gartner Hype Cycle. I mean, it launched literally November of 2022. We got to this giant hype, and now we're still trying to wrestle with what is the reality of what the technology can truly do. I think there is a lot of observed potential for what that could do to scaffold for learning abilities, language learners, in a variety of different ways. But we don't quite know yet. We're in uncharted territory, and there hasn't been, the research isn't there yet to see that, because again, we're about 2 years in now, maybe.
But I think we
But-
would know
oh,
that
yeah.
whatever it is, it has to be purposeful,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Not just left up. It
Correct.
has to be something that would be structured and.
Yep.
All right, thank you, team. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Classroom.
All right, we're going to switch over to the Carey Action Plan, and we have Dr. Bass, Brian Bass, is going to introduce who's with you this evening, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Mosqueda Jones, Vice Chair Prince, members of the board, our superintendent, Dr. Heil, and members of the community that are with us this evening. A long time ago, we started down a journey in the 2021-2022 school year with the DM group offering a study and analysis of our special ed programming in the district. This was in partnership with EMO to really understand some of the staff workload concerns related to our operations and our systems and practices within special ed programming in our district. We received that report and we felt like it missed the mark, and we asked the superintendent at that time to think about how to respond to the feedback and the concerns around it not really responding clearly and directly to the workload concerns. And so out of that came a conversation with the executive director of the Carey Center for Applied Research Education and Educational Improvement. I'm off script here, that's why
It's okay.
I may have used some ChatGPT stuff and then.
It's the best with Harvard.
Great segue.
Good save. And so Carey engaged in their format for studying our special ed programming, and because of their notoriety and recognition for really understanding the Minnesota context and landscape, at that time we thought they would be the best partner to help provide some great feedback. And then last September they presented, and again we felt like it missed the mark. And so Sunny, myself, and others, we sat down with the executive director of Carey, Kim Gibbons, and we talked about our frustration and really that we might just end the partnership and go a different direction. And she asked for one more chance, and she wanted to put the best facilitators in the space with us. And so she assigned the Public Progress as a group out of Iowa, who the executive director of that group was high up in the Department of Education for Iowa, and is known for being a really strong guru and advocate around MTSS and really understanding systems. And so we have spent the last 7 months working with their team and a cross-section of representatives across the district. And I'm really excited about the foundation that we have now to really respond to those workload concerns, to also understand what cohesiveness we need around the systems and practices in special ed, as well as trying to establish some early wins for our staff to feel like they're getting some relief around some of these workload concerns. So you'll see in the documentation that's provided for you this evening that information is put forward in presentations and summaries to really show how we're responding to the workload concerns that our staff have brought forward. So I'll stop right there and introduce our Director of Student Services, Sunny Burskin, to take on the lead for our presentation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. Sounds like we're 0 for 2 when it comes to special education audit reports. So
we believe in you.
I am going to be sharing a little bit of information about our process, what we've been doing since we were here in September. So bear with me because I'm also going to get into the action plan. And we're going to talk about the tangible items, what teachers are going to notice, the outcomes for our students and our staff. So we will get to that point as well. But we're going to talk about the process and the document that we've created. You have several documents in your folder. Please reference them as needed as I bring them up. And we're going to start with a summary of the results because why bury the lead? We have completed an action plan with our Carey Action Planning Committee. We reviewed the 58 recommendations from the Carey audit and narrowed that down to 9 actionable steps. The committee consisted of staff members from across the district. All special education teachers, ESPs, and administrators were invited to be a part of the committee, and we had representation from all three of those work groups and most of the buildings within the district, and representation all the way from staff that work with kiddos birth through age 22, had their voice in this and had their hands on this plan. In the action plan, you'll notice that the actions are categorized in three main areas. The first is responding to workload concerns. Second is increasing our system cohesiveness, and then establishing some short-term wins, things that will be high leverage and actionable that we can see results on within our first year of implementation. So that will come up from time to time. So our Carry Action Committee, which I mentioned, has met 5 times this year starting in November. And we're going to continue to work in that committee. It will still remain and work with our special education advisory team moving forward. Most of our meetings were facilitated by Carrie and the Public Progress and their organizations. They really led us through some of this work. So when we met during these 5 meetings, we had an hour and a half in-person meetings, and we really got down to business at those meetings. We were focused and we were productive. We had a lot to get through. We went through a sorting process, the SWOT analysis. We used an effort for effect matrix to prioritize the recommendations that we pulled out from the report, and then created our action plan. I'm going to get into those steps in a little bit more detail. The SWOT analysis, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, allows us to look at both internal and external factors that are going to contribute to the success of new initiatives. So this is a sorting process, and staff sorted all 58 of those recommendations, and the result of that was a lot of overlap. We thought that as staff worked independently and in small groups, we were going to come away with sort of this mess of information, but everybody's results were very similar. And it allowed us to move forward, focusing on the district's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, and those that are internal and within our control. The external, we didn't have very much fall into these categories. In fact, only one thing, an external opportunity, which would be addressing high rates of student absenteeism. And overall, what that means is the committee that we're working on this saw a lot of opportunity within our control to make positive impacts to their workload and to student outcomes. So that's a really good place to start. We then took the recommendations and ran them through the effort for effect matrix. This is based on effect size work by Dr. Hattie, and really looking at what are those recommendations that we can implement with an appropriate amount of effort that are going to have a great impact on student outcomes, as opposed to the opposite of that, things that take a lot of time, a lot of effort, might not even be required, and don't really change anything for kids. So running it through that matrix as well. So that created an action plan for us. I'm going to briefly go through some of these items, and then we'll look more in depth again at those tangible pieces. But to respond directly to workload concerns, it was determined that what we need to do as a district is remove barriers to efficiency, and then allow and encourage the development of staff efficacy and collective efficacy, group efficacy. And then improving system level cohesiveness. Looking at our district-wide standards and supports for behavior, mental health, and social emotional learning. How are we allocating our resources? How are we prioritizing the when, where, and why? And then looking at a district-wide data collection system and how we would implement that and ensure fidelity. And in our final category that the committee utilized for codifying this information was establishing these short-term wins. And some of those examples include increasing our Tier 1 and Tier 2 behavior interventions in the general education setting, addressing absenteeism, strengthening our core curriculum, and improving family and community engagement. So, those are all words right now, and they don't feel like action steps, right? And I think that was what we took away in that September meeting too of, yep, this is great, we would love to do all these things, but how? Like, what does that actually look like? And so that's why I'm excited to get into our action plan a little bit. On our screen is just kind of a visual of that process staff went through, and I really wanted to put this up there just to kind of acknowledge the journey that they went through. We didn't just sit down and use star our favorite recommendations and then move forward with those. They really used strong processes and dove into the work in order to come up with this action plan. So we're going to take a look at 2 of the 9 action items to get a better look at how this is going to translate into something that positively impacts staff and students. I selected 2. I'm happy to answer questions about any of the 9, but these will be 2 that we're going to be working on right away. The first one that we're looking at is priority D. So you have an action plan in your, it's your big document. Yeah, it's the special print job. Yeah, in your folder.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
We get all of our data like this?
So we're looking at MD, which is reinforcing the commitment of dedicated special education staff by removing barriers to efficiency. And specifically using the effort for effect matrix to determine what are we doing that's above and beyond that isn't helping students at all. And there are things, and I can give a really concrete example of something we addressed earlier this school year using this method. So Osseo area schools, when I arrived in July, we're still completing what are called reevaluations for students on IEPs in all situations. So every 3 years, the student got a reevaluation. There was no room for consideration of whether that student would benefit from that reevaluation, whether we needed the information. It was just, we were going to check that box every 3 years. 2 years prior to this, Minnesota, the Department of Education said that's actually no longer necessary. And the team can make a thoughtful determination on whether a student should be reevaluated. So as a special education leadership committee, we came up with a process that we then shared with our school psychologists who refined it. And we no longer require 3-year reevaluations. The effort of a reevaluation is huge. 5 hours minimum for a student with very little needs, all the way up to 15 hours for a student with more significant needs. And to do those arbitrarily, just because a 3-year time period had come up, isn't effective. And often doesn't provide results that family or students are looking for. They have a teacher that's working with them every day, often communicating with families every day or every week. They already have all the data that they need. This is just checking a box. So I'm happy to share that because of the work of our teams, this year we've already bypassed 165 evaluations. So that is a large amount of staff hours that would have been spent completing paperwork that can now be spent interacting with students.
Can I just ask a quick question
Yeah.
on that? So when a student, so I love that, and when a student's needs change, and a teacher or a parent, whether if it's past the 3 years or before, they still have the opportunity, they can still request
Yes.
that be evaluated. So it's not just like they said, oh, don't need, and then we move on. Okay.
No, and we have certain situations that we've described to case managers that we should always evaluate.
Okay.
If we're considering a new category, if there's new needs being presented, if a parent or a teacher brings up concerns. So the center of this is to be what's best for kids, to not pull kids out of class for random testing when they don't need it, or to provide them all the testing that they need when they need it.
Well, I was kind of thinking about the other side of it, when a child can move out. And just not keeping them in because we've just decided not to.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
So that's just one example. We have so many paperwork specific processes that our team is going to be able to really dive into and determine, is this necessary? Is this helping anyone? Or are we checking a box that's not even a box anymore?
This is the first time in 5.5 years that I've heard that. I've never, previously it's always been all of this is required.
Yeah.
So this is fantastic to have dug into the insight and to say, no, there is opportunity to take the work out, because I feel like I've only ever heard that everything is required. Is that consistent?
Yeah.
You said
Yeah.
the 3-year thing, that just was 2 years ago?
2 years ago that changed,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
So Minnesota is always performing above federal statute, and often school districts are then trying to perform above Minnesota statute. And so if there's things that we're doing above and beyond that are amazing for students, then we should keep doing them.
Right.
But we at least should take an opportunity to look at if there's some that fall in the other category. All right, the next action item that I'm gonna share with you an example of how this could be implemented is priority A. So adopting a comprehensive support approach to support for behavior, social emotional learning, and mental health. So we have wonderful things going on in our district related to mental health, social emotional learning. We have exceptional PBIS work happening with awards in the area of PBIS. And yet there's still areas where we can make improvement that would impact all teachers and all students. So really finding that connection between PBIS and MTSS. So how are we linking those? How are we utilizing researched behavior interventions to support students before they're special education students? And so what this might look like in a tangible way is providing general education teachers with the training and the support necessary to handle Tier 1 and Tier 2 behaviors within their classroom. Often, a difference that we notice with special education students is 2 students in one classroom that both stick their tongue out at the teacher. And if the student is on an IEP, that student then leaves because they have somewhere to go, someone to process with, and then come back, where the teacher manages the behavior for the general education student. And so really giving the teachers the skill and permission to manage those behaviors within their classroom. It's very frustrating for special education teachers to never be able to follow a schedule. I remember being a teacher and thinking, you know, I have kiddos that don't go to language arts. Like, I am their first grade reading teacher. That's kind of a big deal. I can't be interrupted 17 times during their session for kiddos that are coming in unplanned. So let's give these skills to our gen ed teachers so that we can take that burden off of our special ed teachers. To not only provide all of these different types of instruction, but then to manage unexpected student visits constantly. So I think that's another example of something that's really tangible and that teachers will notice, they'll feel the impact of that. Which is why I brought those 2 examples up today, and I could see that I could envision our work moving forward, starting with those 2 items. So results, moving out of the action plan now, I'm kind of looking at what we're going to look for immediately. How are we going to know that things are in place? We're hoping to see increased staff engagement, time that staff are interacting with students, and collaboration among general ed and special ed teachers. And then of course a decrease in the workload that doesn't directly involve the kids, that paperwork. And then for our students and families, increased outreach and engagement and improved attendance at school, decreased disproportionate discipline, and challenging behaviors in general. Long-term results, very similar, but they're going to last longer. That's how I wrap that up. No, but really one of the big ones on here is that looking for that decrease in staff turnover, so that our teachers feel supported in Osseo area schools. They feel like we are looking out for them, that we're acknowledging that they have challenging jobs, that we want to provide the support needed for them to do their job within their work week. And then for students and families, improved outcomes. That's what we want for all of our students. So whenever that's something that's on the table, it should be something that we're striving for. So our next steps, our CARE Action Planning Committee is going to work closely with our special education advisory team which is myself, my assistant director, and then our special education coordinators, to share the work that they've done and talk about next steps in moving forward with our action plan, creating our more detailed timeline. So we have a timeline of 1 year for many of our items, but going through and what does that mean for June, July, August. And then continuing to do progress monitoring throughout our implementation process in case we need to make adjustments. And we're making a commitment to be back in front of the board at the work session in November, so that you can hold us accountable for all of the work that we have in our action plan.
You know that's recorded, right?
Those are my favorite words in the whole world. I love, I mean, no, honestly though, for you to express that, to say that, you know, that, especially because of where we've been on this, that the team is desiring to be able to come back to monitor, to measure, and hearing the ownership for it is, I really appreciate that.
I didn't say I was going to. Thank you. I appreciate it. And then this is a timeline of just what we've done and what we've talked about thus far. And I like to call this my distraction so you don't ask any questions. So, but thank you for your time. Obviously, open to questions. There's a lot of information in a really small period of time.
I have a question. So the parent advisory committee that we have for special ed, right? How and are we involving them with the advisory team on making sure that, because we want more family engagement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how are we working with them and asking them, much like we ask students, what needs to happen in order for us to all work as a team?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our advisory group has been so great this year. We've had 30 plus parents at every meeting, so we have wonderful parent co-chairs that are doing great work. The results of the Carey audit were presented at our initial meeting this fall, and we've made follow-up more so comments rather than presentations. So that might just be a comment that I just take with me and sit on, because I really like that.
Well, I just want to say this is a huge improvement from our last presentation of this information. I love the quick, tangible things that we can implement right away or have already been implemented in some ways. One of the questions that I had was around professional development. You said increasing the learning for in-classroom teachers, general ed, to be able to help with those classroom distractions and those needs at the time. How will that impact their already existing PD needs? One thing I feel like we talk about a lot is, we're going to need to do professional development on this, and that can burn out teachers. Not that this isn't needed, but just how are we thinking about their professional development around this in conjunction with the rest of their professional development? Mm-hmm. Or is that something we're still working on?
Well, we have meetings set up with Teaching and Learning, who hold quite a bit of that scheduling for the back to school week. We were able to trial something last month, so we had 120 teachers in to do professional development specific to behavior management within their classroom.
ESPs.
Yes, and ESPs, thank you. So 120 staff, and we focused on grades K through 3, because that was where the need was showing at that time that we were creating that. We got a lot of positive feedback, so I think we'll be able to take that and leverage it. I don't have all the answers, but I'm super interested in moving forward.
Another thing we're doing, Director Douglas, is one of the 3 C's is we're looking at the weight on the system. So we're looking at all our departments of when we are doing training, how much weight. So even when we're adding, we're trying to look at what else is going on in the system for teachers and all of our staff. It may be too much. So
I love
that.
That effort effect matrix comes
Yes.
into play.
Yeah, and as a teacher, that's a training that has effort for effect. Like I'll put in time for that training. If it keeps my kids in my classroom and I can manage the classroom better because there's tools that I don't have, that would be good, right?
One of the cool things too is that the PD was in collaboration with EMO.
With EMO,
So we did an
yeah.
entry over to them. So.
How did the, has the broader staff seen these recommendations yet? And if so, how are they responding to it?
We have a memo written, ready to go out, that Brian is gonna view, and we have contact information on there for some of the members that are also teachers, which I think will be helpful, because they can reach out to their own peers about the process, so.
We want to get board feedback first.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And maybe
Okay, yeah.
messages out, but we do have a timeline for when we're trying to make sure we communicate and get additional feedback from some sites.
So your email will go, they like it, they like it.
Really though, like the way that this was put together, and you can see the really clear information and what we're gonna do about it is huge. That's what I think we've been asking for, and this really delivered.
Awesome.
We may or may not have had a hammer.
It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. Thank you.
Is our next update on this in November?
Yeah.
Okay. I think to this.
That's our proposal.
Okay. To the staff comment, I know that they haven't seen all of this yet, but it would be great to have them involved in helping to lead this work, and to also have them come back and present with you all progress on this, because I know we generally hear the complaints and what's going wrong, but to have them actually talk about the progress and the work that's happening would be a nice change.
I did have just one last comment, is when it comes to this process, the due process paperwork, that's where I think AI would be really good.
AI's okay with this one.
I'm just saying, like, to ease the
There
workflow.
is some great opportunity in that space, with data privacy in mind.
Right.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
You deserve.
And just when you think it can't get better, it's time to go over repurpose site update. So, woo-hoo. It's good.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to help lead this last agenda item of this work session for tonight. And we'll be talking about the repurposing portion of the Building a Better Future plan. A lot of the cabinet members will be chiming in on this, as well as me, and also Carrie Cave and Ethan Nerdals are both here as well. They've been helping with some of the. Jill Kine is here too, yeah.
Carrie, come over. No, you're fine.
So we've got some folks that have been doing some pre-planning work on this, so we're all here. Yep, Jill and May just added something too last week, I think. We got the crew. So we're, as you're all aware, Building a Better Future has been it's an amazing and huge project that's great. And this repurposing site is a big change for our system, right? And we wanted to start, I think it's important to start by acknowledging that. And it's the biggest change for the children and families at Crestview Elementary, right? So I think that's important for us to acknowledge that when we start this conversation, because I know it's easy for me to get caught up in, well, what are we going to do and all that kind of stuff. But it's also important to ground us that we're only 1 month away from staff, students, and families having been informed that their school was going to be repurposed. That was the first week of April, right? So that's not that long ago. So throughout this whole process, one of our goals was to ensure that people were cared for along the way, and especially our Crestview families and school staff would be not only supported, but that we would recognize and celebrate the history of the school during this transition time. And I think I can share from some of Dr. Heil's comments and Steve and some of my colleagues that were on site at Crestview. Stephanie Webster, their principal, has been exemplary in how she has cared for her team and her community, right? And that doesn't surprise us, but I think it's worth acknowledging. So we realize that this is just happening and is currently happening. And tonight we're excited to talk a little bit more in depth about the repurposing portion of this plan. And we wanted to have, it's always fun when Amy kicks us off, Amy Moore, right? We wanted to make sure that everyone in here understood from a broader sense and a somewhat legal sense what repurposing a school is defined as.
Somewhat legal.
Yeah.
I'll give you the legal framework pretty quick.
Yeah.
We will be temporarily closing the school building. There will be work that will be done. Hopefully it will take a year, but you have the ability under statute to close temporarily for 3 years. We provide the public an opportunity in a public meeting to give comment, so that will be at your next board meeting, but practically could happen at any public comment time as well. We will be looking at reassigning grades, reassigning the K through 5 grades to other schools and focusing on the pre-K grades at that site. So there's not a closing of the school building. It is just the temporary closing, and then we allow public comment at a public meeting.
All right, thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
In that, the reason we started with that is because it'll make sense on, with the reassigning of grades and the repurposing on why some things have to be there versus a completely open-ended, what do you all think we should put there, right? You know, and I'm not being super facetious that we want to get community input, but there are going to be some legal parameters on what you can and can't do when you repurpose a site versus straight up close a school building. So that we wanted to have Amy start. So thank you. So first we're going to talk about how we got here and some of the why, and we'll follow that with some of our initial thoughts on future plans. As many of you are aware, our Building a Better Future plan shared that an elementary school would be repurposed to serve pre-kindergarten grades, enrichment, and community-based programming needs.
Who's doing the slides?
Oh, Kate? Yeah. Thank you. And thanks to Kay for putting this together.
Everything.
Well, I was out of town
Literally.
last week, so
Yeah.
this is super teamwork. After much research and consideration, including Building a Better Future and our Enrollment and Capacity Management Committee, Crestview Elementary, as you're aware, was chosen as the school to be repurposed. And what does this mean? Crestview kindergarten through grade 5 students and staff will be moving schools the fall of 2025, right? The start of the 25-26 school year. Crestview will continue to have elementary programming for next year's 2024-2025 school year, right? So this isn't starting, that's not happening in the fall. It's a year from the fall. It's just important to remember. And as it is currently configured, that will end June of 2025, essentially that last week of school in 2025. And so John's going to talk a little bit about the why, how we got here.
Thanks, Brian. So as we go through the whys, it's important to know that this is a big decision. This was a very big decision for our system, and it's not an easy decision to make. It affects a lot of people, both families, staff, students, and future students. We put a lot of years, many years of research in the district got us to this point. Staff, students, parents, caregivers, and community members have all been a part of that journey to get us to this decision. Brian mentioned ECMAC, which started in 2017, and they've consistently shared different variations that exist with our enrollment capacity and building use, and an ongoing need to address those variations that were there. So ECMAC, along with 6 other study groups, provided recommendations on the Build a Better Future plan that included several facility improvements and the repurposing of a school or possibly multiple schools. Those recommendations went to the Oversight Task Force, who vetted and reviewed that work and made final recommendations to the school board using the criteria in alignment with our district's mission and values. And there's a list here of all the criteria. I won't read them for you, but all the different pieces that we used to make sure we were making the best decisions we could make and what that recommendation was, and we touched on that before we brought it to you with the school board. And that finalized Build a Better Future plan solidified the decision to move forward with an elementary repurposing. The Osseo Area Schools team has been working to determine which elementary school to repurpose since approval of the Build a Better Future referendum in 2023. So we've been working on that many, many times, had a lot of conversations in cabinet about being intentional and thoughtful in this process. And in many times said, slow the process down. Wait, here's another scenario, slow the process down. And so we wanted to be very, very intentional before we brought it forward. So obviously Crestview was chosen, and there's really specific reasons why, and we'll just kind of highlight the three big ones. There are others. But it starts really with the central location to other neighborhood schools. It's an easy school to spread the students to because they're in very close proximity. The opportunity to expand and offer more community services. We saw that in our study that we have other needs. We have needs to do more community programs that people are asking us for, and we didn't have a place to put them. And finally, the lower student enrollment in that building that is reaching unsustainable levels. Today we have about 225 K through 5 kids in that building, and the projections are to be under 200 in the next couple of years if we just continue going. And I'll turn it back to Kay for more information.
As Brian shared earlier as he introduced tonight, we wanted to make sure in our communications that we were informing people, but we also wanted to share that we were going to support people through this process and people are going to be cared for as well. So we were very intentional who we reached out to and how we reached out to them and made sure that that was a very tight time frame. So over the last several weeks, we have been informing a variety of audiences, definitely with our Crestview at the top here, our Crestview staff, students, and parents and caregivers. Also, staff district-wide are in the know at this point in time, families district-wide. And then we've also reached out to our Brooklyn Park representatives and community groups to make sure that Brooklyn Park, the city of Brooklyn Park as a whole, is in the know as well, and then you as school board members too. There's a variety of ways that we've informed audiences. This has been definitely in-person conversations and meetings for those that are impacted directly the most. We've offered that online as well for those that might not be able to come in person to some of these events. Emails, e-news articles, fact sheets with a lot of detail, snail mail letters, videos. We had a great video we shared with students to make sure that they were in the know too. And our website, which really has the most extensive information, you can find a lot of answers to FAQ, and we would encourage people to reach out to our hotlines that we have going on right now. If there's not something addressed there, we want to make sure that it gets answered. But it's very extensive right now on even what's out there currently. So this is a snapshot of our timeline moving forward. So we've been, as I've shared, making sure that everybody is in the know. We will continue to share reminders, until the school is repurposed next summer. We will also start celebrating, the great things that have happened, the history. We want to commemorate Crestview as a whole, so we will start doing that this month and moving forward throughout next school year as well. Families will have a choice as to which school that they want to transfer to. So that is going to be between Edinburgh, Fair Oaks, and Zanewood. We are going to have a nights, we're still fine tuning that, but we're going to be talking about or giving an opportunity for families to visit these transferring schools in September, so coming up later this fall. Construction will start at Crestview tentatively in June 2025. And then the new journeys will start for Crestview staff and students at their new transferring schools in September of 2025, with the newly repurposed site to tentatively open in September 2026. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Fisk.
Before I kind of share this, so there's a couple things I did want to echo. One is, again, I think the approach and the efforts that we've made to really embrace the school, I think we're hearing back that that's been successful. And having gone through this in a previous district and seeing how not to do it, I'm very happy in the way that we did it, even though, as we've heard, it was difficult. And again, I can't stress Stephanie's leadership. And just know too that as part of the actions that we're taking, myself, Dr. Hayo, Stephanie, and the receiving principals have started to come together to talk about how do we really prep the school so that the students feel welcome, and even some of the staff that may arrive there as well, but really kind of thinking about how do we help that community. So I think that's good. And so with that, hopefully the kind of the exciting piece here, we have I think some incredible innovation that we're going after. And so, with that transition, so one of the pieces that we've envisioned is to provide, as you can see here, 125 seats. This heritage learning model focused on cultural immersion, centering our indigenous, Hmong, East, West African, and Spanish languages. And again, the innovation around that and the possibilities. And you'll probably hear a little bit more in some of the questions, but just this is, it really feels like the right time and the right opportunity and some flexibilities that we haven't necessarily had from MD. So I think that's going to really help us with that. And as part of that, so there's work that's happening behind the scenes. So we have, for example, we have with Northwest Suburban Integration School District, we have a magnet grant that we're pursuing, which is focused on culturally revitalizing foundations for academic success. And so this federal grant will be awarded in September of 2024. And so we hope with that we'll receive additional funding for the development of our cultural immersion pre-K programming. So there's some incredible opportunity here, and seeing how this will not only hopefully excite our young learners, but connect our community and really open up the new vision of that building. Two, part of what we're talking about is some community programs, again, which could include but not be limited to enrichment for adult and youth, some community gathering spaces, some opportunities as that could be collected as part of this design process, because there is going to be space that still exists, even though we're going to have some. You're going to hear a little bit more about some of the things that we're really pursuing, like the pre-kindergarten. But we're going to have space, and so that opportunity will be open to our community to help us envision what that space could do and what that might look like. So also too, we've this is kind of Brian talked about this, kind of something that really just arrived at us pretty recently. Is we have just received a grant from MDH for a plan to build out a clinic potentially. And so the grant dollars that are going to come with this will cover startup costs and exploration of scope of services. And so part of that process too will be an assessment of the needs of the community and our scholars. And so, part of that grant too will be working with Park Nicollet to really kind of build that out over time. But again, the vision, as it kind of unfolds, would be that this community access would also serve our students, but also have an opportunity to be a resource into the community. So that's very exciting, and so a lot of work will be done and needs to be done in that portion. And Jill Lene has been leading that for us. The American Indian Cultural Center, which alongside a native language revitalization program. You see Ethan here. This is very exciting because having the cultural center there as the permanent location there is going to just open up some incredible opportunities and connections. So at the cultural center, it's going to be featuring a curated library boasting over 1,000 texts, authored by American Indians and housing the American Indian Education Department. So we'll offer experiential learning opportunities based on Dakota and Ojibwe. Also, too, the center could and would be a dynamic cultural hub for a wide array of programs. These will include professional development for teachers and staff, Dakota and Ojibwe language classes, drum and dance sessions, regalia crafting, wooden stick lacrosse, and beading club, and meetings of the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, just to name a few. And so, thinking about the rationale and the thinking of that, the incredible grounds and opportunities that are available to us there, it's going to be just an incredible connection between inside and what's happening in the building and what could be happening outside the building. And so those are kind of the key pieces that we've been thinking about and we'll be working on. And here, as we mentioned, we're not doing this alone. We're reaching out. And so having we call Killer K on our team. We've already launched into Thought Exchange, and so she's been very serious about us getting on the Thought Exchange, but really getting out there and making sure that we're reaching out, we're creating opportunities for the community to give us some feedback and help us vision what this community asset can be. So, of course, that programming feedback will help us shape as we begin to work with our designers and architects, and we hope to have those things by sometime this summer.
Good.
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Can Ethan share a little bit about?
Oh, yeah, please, Ethan, if there's something you want to elaborate on.
Yeah.
Sure, I think Steve really nailed it, but one of the things we're most excited about is having a home for the Dakota Ojibwe language classes that we've recently added into our schools for credit. And so we're looking at how we can expand that program through a multi-year MDE, Native Language Revitalization Grant, to offer this class to all scholars in the district, which is something that's really been missing. You know, the original languages of this place, I always say, we conduct most of our instruction in the foreign language of English. You know, so it's nice to finally be offering the original languages of Minnesota, as well as professional development opportunities with the recent statutory requirements of Indian education for all in all classrooms and subject areas. This way we can prepare our teachers to have the confidence and the background knowledge to effectively reach all students with these state standards. So we're looking forward to community collaborations and how we can best utilize this space as an Osseo school community.
Can we go back to the one slide, Steve, the one prior to this? Okay. So, Ethan, is the heritage learning model that will be focused on centering around Indigenous, will that be focused on Dakota and Ojibwe?
Yeah, so it's a cultural immersion versus language immersion.
Not a language, a culture.
Yes.
So that will be infusing the indigenous cultures of Minnesota and our general Great Lakes region. Whereas the Cultural Center has specific language courses of Dakota and Ojibwe, individualized learning pathways that we'll be building out with advanced level courses, graduate courses, etc.
Thank you.
And I think the other innovation that, thanks for asking that, is the opportunity that might pull in our native language speakers across the board, and how that might, again, act as a resource into that space for us. And so this isn't like, I think, the typical immersion programming, but what it will do is really sort of elevate, we vision that cultural aspect, and really kind of make it exciting and worthwhile for everyone.
Do you want to talk about the MAP grant at all? Or
Is there anything on the MAP grant that you'd like to add?
So MAP grant, there are 5 districts that are partnering with Northwest Suburban, and they're actually the grant writers. And as of right now, the application is 300 pages. It's due Friday, but we're feeling pretty confident. And it's really focusing on cultural revitalization for academic success. And so I think that our pre-K programming fits right into that. We represent about 7.2% of the student enrollment in that grant, and right now our portion of the budget is about $1.5 million, and it's really focusing on the planning of the programming and professional learning for teachers, hiring people to coordinate the program, including community experts to come in and provide that professional learning that Ethan talked about to all of the different teachers in there.
We would be able to do the program anyway, but if the money's there, why not use it? So,
Yeah.
And then one of the things I mentioned, some opportunities that we have now, maybe Carrie, you could talk a little bit about some of the flexibility, especially around grading of funds and some of the things that we've been pursuing and really trying to kind of leverage.
Yep, so right now, a lot of our pre-K experiences are very siloed, so having the opportunity to kind of pause a little bit and look at how do we blend and grade the funding
One of the things we are pursuing right now is we apply for additional funds for BPK as well to make those seat expansions, get that additional funding, but also how do we collaborate more with our early childhood education funds, our tuition-based programs. Originally when BPK came out in Minnesota, you couldn't mix funding streams in a classroom, right? And now you can, right? So you can take that classroom and have kids getting multiple experiences and families not necessarily knowing how their kiddo is funded in that program, but we can be the creative builders and engineers in that space and really think through how do we best meet our community needs and get kids engaged in Os area schools at 4 or younger, right, and then continue on their journey with us within that case as well, but then also bringing in some amazing components that's going to give them an even more enriching early learning experience that launches them into kindergarten even more successfully.
Jill, anything that I missed on the grant itself for the community-based school health center?
I don't think so. It's an exciting opportunity. It originated from a DPAC recommendation. We have a strong partnership with the Park and Gillett Foundation as well as the Minnesota School-Based Alliance. So they're going to be guiding us through the entire process, so it's exciting.
Yeah, and we're, so thank you to everyone who chipped in and shared things. I appreciate it. And we're really, what I want you to take away from tonight is we're not telling you everything that's going into that school, but we're starting with the programs that would meet the requirements that Amy helped lay out for us, right? So there still is going to be community input. So I'll pick early childhood because that one's more in my wheelhouse than some of the other ones, right? So we want to have the cultural immersion and heritage site in pre-K. That's exciting to think about an early childhood center that has these components. So even when we are meeting some of these requirements, we want to offer resources that weren't there before, right? So one thing that I believe we're committing to is we don't want to simply pick up, let's say the community education team was short on office space. We're not going to pick up the community education team and put them in this repurposed site because that already exists, right? So hopefully what you're hearing tonight are, even in the case of something that meets the legal requirements to repurpose a school, you're hearing about something that will be hopefully viewed as a community resource. So even though we know we're going to do a pre-K focus, you still have the time to get in community input on, we know we're going to nail this for a bunch of 4-year-olds, right? But do you also want, what are other things related to supporting your youngest kids in this site? Well, it might be some parenting classes. It might be some opportunities for 3-year-olds, right? It could be a nature play center outside, right? So just because even though the big bucket is kind of defined, what the heck fits under that big bucket? Like that, those are the input that we want to get, right? And there's plenty of other opportunities. When you say community-based programming, that can be a ton of things. It can be partners with existing organizations in the community that want to be able to hold public meetings at the place. It could be professional development for our staff where we no longer need to rent out facilities to do some of our larger gatherings, and have do enrichment, have it be multi-use throughout the day. Since I'm helping lead this, I've got my own one thing that I want that I'll try to influence, but I'll listen.
No wonder you wanted to lead it.
Like, I think we want to get a lot of input on just having a stellar, what the heck's happening on the grounds of this building, right? Like, when you drive by there, what makes you want to stop in and check it out, right? And that could be a lot of things. I love nature play areas for little kids when you watch them interact in those spaces. You can have food truck nights where there's places where people get to gather and eat. The opportunities are endless, but when you drive by it, you say, it's kind of like when I drive by a park that I really love. Like, I stop in and I walk around and I do things there, right? Because it's appealing. So what are things that we can do that folks know, this is where I go to gather in when I'm in this neighborhood? right? So I think those are some of the things that we'll be doing in addition to thought exchange. You know, there's opportunity for community to address the board on the 21st. We're going to continue to share our information on the website. You know, Kate does a great job of putting in FAQs or input areas, but we'll also be convening. We met with some of the early childhood people, like what do you call them, info boards?
Yeah.
We want to have info boards at Tater Days and different things in the community where people are already coming. And since they're there, we're not asking them to come to us. We'll just have a booth and say, hey, give your input on, we're repurposing the site. Here's what we want it to be, a community resource. What are some ideas you have? Let's talk to each other. Let's put things on the board. We're just starting, but these are the things that we're thinking about. And we wanted to give the school board a opportunity to once again hear on how we kind of landed here. And now here are some initial thought. Here's a learning that we had around what repurposing means, right? And we want to, of course, we're going to legally meet any requirement. And then here are some possibilities that we're already excited about as we start to gather what it could look like. Because our goal when we open this place in fall of 2026, people are going to be excited that this is a resource in their community, and we want to do it well. So we'll just end by saying thank you for allowing us a chance to kind of share some of our initial thoughts. We're certainly open to any questions or comments that you would have at this point too.
Great. What questions, comments, discussion?
I'm jumping. I'm jumping over. You know this is my dream here. So my first question is in the BBF for the bond, we were going to have outdoor classrooms for every elementary building. Is that like automatically on this?
Money was set aside
included?
for this site too,
Okay.
because we hadn't decided which site. So they're all set.
Okay.
There's money for every site.
I
And we
just-
still want to utilize that here in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was there. And then I have a whole bunch of ideas, but I'm not gonna pour them out here.
We do have thought exchange.
No, but
Fill out
related
any-
to outside in nature and all
Yeah.
that, I have this dream that there will be like gardening at
Community
this,
gardens, yeah.
and that there will be indigenous plants there, and that there might be some things that many cultures use in different ways that can bring that all together. So that's my one.
Have you been reading our notes?
I think she has.
I'm sure you all thought of all the things that I have in my head, but.
Well, actually, next week, we're gonna be out there doing a tree planting at Crestview. So I think they're planting about 20 trees, so there's gonna be some exciting things there, so, yeah.
Thanks.
Feel free to visit my school where we have a little orchard and
Yes.
pollinator garden and all sorts of things.
So my question goes back a little bit to the families that are currently at Crestview.
Yeah.
More so for incoming. So are those incoming kindergarteners, those late enrollments, people moving into the district, especially once the school year's already started?
That's right.
What's the plan for those families?
We got
Yeah.
the answer.
Awesome question.
I
So-
figured you did.
Yeah, so obviously we're working with the enrollment center. If anyone should move into the area and they let us know they're going to enroll at Crestview, of course we're going to tell them what the situation is, right? So I think that's part of it, and that's one of the reasons why we named the receiving schools, because it's likely that's where you would go. And every family is different, to state the obvious, right? So like if I have a 4th grade student, I might say, I want my kid to continue through 5th grade before doing any type of in-district transfer or anything like that. But we still have in-district transfer options for families, but we are doing that. It was purposeful to not repurpose the school starting this coming fall, right? It gives people a little more time to understand what's going on and be respectful of what decisions they might make. Because I don't know, some people might say no big deal if my kid starts kindergarten at a school knowing they're going to need to move the next year, and others might say I'd rather check into potential in-district transfer options and have my child start at the school they're going to continue on for the next 5 years. So I don't know if that 100% answers it, Heather.
But all of the
Kind of.
kids that are there will have transportation. If they have a
Yes.
sibling
Absolutely.
coming in,
Yeah.
they will also be
That
able
was
to
my
go.
next
Yes.
So
question.
parents, kids do not have to go to separate schools.
We'll treat that
Yeah.
intentionally. One of the things we're trying to do, we would really like Crestview to remain as full as possible
Yeah.
for the next
Next
school
year.
year.
Right.
So part of that is a carrot. If you choose to in-district transfer, just like today, to any school, transportation's now at your discretion to do that. If you stay and then say, we're gonna go through the process with you, now transportation's on us
Okay.
for that time.
For those
We'll take
three
care of it.
schools.
For those three schools, for the rest of the term of your elementary time.
And that-
And then if you have a sibling
So
coming up,
sibling
we'll just
coming in.
address those separately because they're pretty one-off and
Yeah.
go, oh yeah, we'll figure that out. for you."
Okay.
That's easy to do. We'll take care of it. The point in it is families need to be whole and families need to feel cared for, and we can do that.
And they're
Yeah, so-
excited about transportation, they're excited about having Kids Stop,
Mhm.
because Crestview doesn't have Kids Stop. so.
Yeah, so some soft landing strategies might be one way. I like the word caring, making sure people are cared for throughout it, because, yeah, that could be more than one transition in a couple of years, right? So we're trying to do some of those things.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking about is
Yeah.
when Crestview is already a highly transitional school for those families that have already, they're coming
That's right.
in mid-year and then to have to switch to another school, it might be.
And they
Little
will
challenging.
not have to do boundary changes in 26.
Okay.
So they'll
Yeah.
move.
Yeah, they
once.
get to stay with
Yes.
whichever
Yeah.
school they choose.
Right, thanks,
Once
Dr.
they
Howell.
make a
One
decision
move.
and move,
Yeah.
we'll honor that decision.
Okay, cool.
And then new students after that, do we know which school they go to, or is it going to be split between the three?
So we'll go through the boundary process for that building the same way we will for the others.
Okay.
So it's got community input and all those things to make the decision. One of the things we're trying to do is get information from the families that are there currently, I think by end of December, pretty
End
much,
of
right?
December.
Yeah. So we can put that into our enrollment planning, so we know if 100 kids go to Edinbrook and 50 kids go to Zanewood and 55 go to Crest or to Fair Oaks, we can move the enrollment so staffing from DLTL is accurate, and they're putting the staff where the staff need to
And the
go.
staff wants to follow the kids.
So we want to make sure we're doing that appropriately,
Mhm.
to follow that information. And then, once after that, and with that, I want to say, like, if you miss the deadline, we're going to reach out to you and try to connect with every single student we can connect with and give them the choice. If for some reason we can't, at some point, we'll say, here's the boundary, and now the boundary will apply. But I think, again, one-off case, if we have somebody who goes, well, I missed it because I had this extenuating circumstance, we'll figure it out, take care of them. That's what we're there to do, so.
The boundary, like the full boundary process for elementary and middle will start this fall. We'll be talking about parameters with the community, and then we'll have more of a, like, community meetings after winter break. And then probably this time, maybe even earlier next year, we'll have what those finalized boundaries will be.
So
Just
the-
depends on how many times we have to initiate.
The former Crestview attendance area then, I think was the question,
Yep,
right,
yep,
Thomas?
yep.
Will then have an assigned boundary.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
So Brian, you already started to answer the questions that I had coming into this, but
Sure.
I know that we have the listening session coming up, or public comment period, which I think is just a check the box kind of thing. I think one of the things that I'm concerned about is just how we're getting input from whoever the target geographical audience is. I know this is a district building, but ideally, or I would say in practice, who's actually going to be using that building every single day? How are we making sure that we're getting input from them? Particularly when it comes to some of these many options that are potentially on the table, and making sure that their voices are accurately represented. And you already listed off, a couple different ways of getting out into the community and getting that information. But I was also just wondering if the FACE team is involved in any of this and sort of how we're engaging them.
So we're making sure, today we actually just kicked off the opportunity to provide feedback, so we did that district-wide, and then we were intentional also to share with all of our schools in our district in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center. So they all have some social media, some email mass notifications that they can send out. And we also shared that, you know, if you have an upcoming, you know, there's a ton of events going on in May to like share out, like here's some posters, you can, you know, put up the QR code. So people are already coming into the school and can participate. Or at like a PTO meeting, if you could do a mention or maybe even take a few minutes to fill out the form. So we're being very intentional to try to reach out to everybody. Even the, actually just this week we're going to be sharing out because we want to make sure like the current attendance area of Crestview is in the know as well, like all those in the neighborhood. So even if you don't have kiddos going to the school, you could also be in the know what's going on. So there was a snail mail letter that went out to like the current community of Crestview, and they were offered the opportunity to participate as well. And we're also going to be sharing it, like Brooklyn Park is great about like sharing flyers and such, so we have some flyers that we can pass out to them. But we're doing that right now this week about making sure that everybody is in the know and aware and can participate.
Yeah, that's going to be, I mean, I think that's going to be the critical part, Thomas, you know, like how, because this is a big deal, right? You know, you know, without naming names, people already reach out to us to let us know what they think should go there, you know, which is fine. You know, but we're going to have to be tight on some of this input process because, well, I guess what the positive way to say it is, there's a lot of needs and desires in the community, right? And that's true, you know, and we're going to get enough ideas to fill Crestview 6 times over. You know, we really are, right? You know, so I think as we get this information, when we start narrowing it down on here's the spirit and some focus areas of what this community building should be, is going to be, that'll help as people give input. And it might help us too on what are potentially, what's the word, non-negotiables are things that you won't have in there. Like we're not just going to pick up a program that currently exists and put it over here, right? That might be one that happens. You know, people have asked about leasing space already from us, right? Like there's a lot. People are going to, word is starting to get out that, you know, the announcement happened and word is getting out. So people are already starting to say, hey, have you heard about this need in our community? What do you think? And that's what we want to hear. And then it's going to be our responsibility to gather all of that information and come up with a coherent plan.
One thing I think about when you're thinking about, that I think we should think about when we're thinking about what we put into this building is growth of the programs that are going in there, not overloading it with too many things, so that when we have a program that is really successful, we have the space to grow it further. And particularly the thing I think about a lot is when it comes to ECFE. That's, you know, when we had ECFE at Arborview and then we had at Willow Lane and we were bursting out, right? Where are we going to put all these people? So I just think that's something we should be mindful of.
It's awesome. And boy, would that be an awesome dilemma.
I know, right?
So, yeah, and you know, part of it is, and also giving it the room to grow, right? So just because you build something and it opens, if it's not been there before, people aren't yet aware of it, right? So we're going to need to do some marketing around what here are the resources in this space, right? And so that people start to know, oh yeah, this exists now in this community where it didn't before. So those are all super important.
Any other questions? Discussion?
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, so that concludes the agenda for tonight. And this work session is adjourned at 8:34 p.m. Thank you. Brian, you get your applause.
Yeah, what's up, everyone?